Morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 24th of June 2025. Lovely to see you all. I hope you're well. In the event of a fire alarm, all members, officers and members of the public are invited to make their way to the entrance of the council car park. This is a long agenda, so we've suggested timings for each item. So I will try and remember to tell you the suggested timing for each item. Is that all right? So we'll get towards the end of that time and I'll be trying to finish that item. So if you want questions, get in early. Just to say, I'm quite happy with conversational questions. So if you ask a question and you want to do a follow-up, don't ask me for permission, as long as you don't go on too long. Is that okay? So we'll start the meeting with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. We have 2 at the moment. Councillor Calder and Councillor Greenberry-Pullin. Are there any more, please?
Just Councillor Calder and Councillor Greenberry-Pullin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. So if we can move on to confirmation of minutes, item 2, for the meeting on the 11th of February. We're considering whether the minutes are a true and correct record. Are there any questions or points to raise? There was something in there about successful regenerative farming sites were discussed and progress would be reported back to the committee. Can we talk about that when we do the work programme? So can we have a show of hands for people whether you're happy that they're true and correct record? Yeah. Thank you very much. So move on to item 3, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest they'd like to declare? Nope, that's fine. Item 4, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 5, division of agenda. There will be none. Item 6, public forum. No requests received. Nope, thank you very much. So now I'd like to use my discretion to talk about the work programme before we move on to the Fusion report. So this is our draft work programme on the screen, which is also in your agenda. So I'd like you to think about what you'd like to cover in the next year. And do you want to cover all of those things? And perhaps it's all right to go away and think about it, is it? We don't need to decide today.
We don't need to decide today, but we could do with members coming back with any options in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we can discuss. And I would say, Chair, in relation to the item you raised from the previous minutes about regenerative farm, it's easy for you to say, farming.
Yes.
Climate change and biodiversity is on there for February, so we could ask for a specific update on regenerative, that farming, at the same time, so we could put a specific link into that February meeting to get an update on that.
I don't know quite how we do it. I'd be quite interested in looking more at local food, which could link into that. I don't know how we explore that. We also might want to engage with our Devon County councillors. We could invite them to an overview and scrutiny meeting. And another question is, are we happy to engage with South West Water and the Environment Agency via our working group? And for the chair of that working group to report back to us, or do you want to invite them to the main committee? So yeah, any feedback on those, please? Councillor Southcott.
I think the working group, yes, is fine, but eventually they've got to come back to the full committee as well.
Is he happy for the chair to report back? Yeah. Councillor Daniel, did you?
I just wanted to ask, can we have another update about the LC whip and the situation with that? Because I felt it was quite unsatisfactory, the situation we found ourselves in, and I would like to continue to raise that keep that on the agenda sometime or somewhere. Thanks.
I think it'd be good to look at active travel in villages rather than our towns. Just think about that. So, Councillor Viney?
Yeah, just to clarify, were you suggesting that the next update with regard to regenerative farming would be February?
I think Mr. Molyneux is suggesting
That's
it
what I
could.
was suggesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I don't think that's way too far away. And climate, biodiversity and regenerative farming should be top of our agenda. We're a rural borough and it should be top of our agenda every time we meet.
You said regenerative farming. You said two other things.
Regenerative farming, which does indeed link to climate and biodiversity loss, but because we are a rural borough, this is something that we can be really active in. Leaving it until February is kicking it down the road.
So can we include local food with that? Does it fit in?
Absolutely fits in, yeah.
May I, Chair? So the purpose of the updates that you'll see on the screen there, they are the council themes from the council plan. So that update is they're spread throughout the year to give an annual update on the progress on that theme. So if you're suggesting something more detailed in terms of climate and biodiversity, it is one of the main themes within the council plan. Mr. Powell, do you want to add anything to?
Yeah, if I can, through you, Chair. So there will be an update going to the Hub Committee on progress on climate change and biodiversity in, I think, September or October. So that'll be a full detailed update on our work in that area. Regenerative farming cuts across, I think, both the climate change and the economy agendas. So that's something we probably have to bring back separately. But we could arrange for a member briefing or an update on that particular subject area, if that would be helpful.
I mean, I know that Southams have got a lot more money than we have, and they're investing a lot of money into local food and regenerative farming, and I'd like us to raise the profile of that as well. So would it be okay to feed back on how we could explore that, as well as aligning with the council plan? Councillor Guthrie?
Just to follow up with what Nick was saying, I agree that we should be pushing that forward as a more dynamic aspect of our work. And I was wondering, I mean, you know, Mark at Chalacombe, and they do a really good, the Dartmoor Regenerative Farming Group, they do an excellent presentation. So I think it would be pretty good to have them here. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, they're an excellent example, and it is so involved in the economy. So yeah. The idea with regenerative farming is it lifts the quality of life, not just, you know, for everyone, but for the farmer too. So yeah, it should be way up there, and they're a great example.
Just to finish that off, they've done a lot. They do a lot of presentations. They've got a really interesting presentation for those that don't know much about the economy, of looking at where all the new grant systems are going and how that affects and impacts workers and farmers in general. So I think it would be a good to invite them in.
So why don't we put it on the October meeting, and then if necessary you could, if members so wish, create a task and finish group that looked into a bit more detail and then bring updates back to the committee as a suggestion.
Yep, so will you send us the contact details of those people? Yeah. Councillor Daniel?
I've got two suggestions. Nick and I were just talking about the wildlife warden, because I've never actually had any contact with them, no response to emails, and I'm just wondering what's happened to that. As we're funding the post, I know it comes under the environment portfolio, but that's not till February, and that's a long, as I was saying, it's a long time, isn't it? And, you know, I would really like to have some contact and know what they're doing.
Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Chair. So there was an update on the climate change and biodiversity theme at the previous ONS meeting. So there was an update on the wildlife warden's activity. But certainly, I mean, if you're trying to make contact and not getting responses, that's clearly not good enough, Councillor Daniels. So leave that with me. I'll make sure we get feedback on that. I think it's a question of sort of trying to work out what the committee need to be doing in terms of understanding the thematic updates, as Mr Molyneux's explained, but also specific areas that perhaps aren't in the council plan at the moment, which members would like to focus on further. So I think the regenerative farming part of it, the economy element of that is in the plan, but it is spread across different areas because some of it's supported by UK SPF, some of it clearly members would like us to work on further. So I think perhaps a suggestion of a task and finish group set up to look at that broad subject would be a sensible way forward.
Okay, we have had verbal updates about the wildlife warden before. Brief. Right, so we'll consider that. Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you mentioned about insufficient resources. Do you know what the figure is and how much would be needed to make this improved process work?
In South Ham's resources are more.
No, you said they have more money than us.
Yeah, I think it's about £500,000.
How much are we spending?
I think they put about £500,000 work. I'll leave it to the experts.
Well, without going into figures, I mean, South Hams have purposely looked at identifying increasing food production and working with smaller enterprises in the area. There was UK SPF funding, but also they put some of their budget beside it at the moment. At West Devon, we haven't allocated specific amounts of money other than through the UK Prosperity Fund. If members wanted to add more money to promote regenerative farming or local food chains, then that would be something we'd have to bring back through full council as part of an amendment to the plan. But it doesn't mean it can't be done at some point.
May I ask then that this be put forward towards the people handling budgets to actually regularise it a bit more? We need to have a clear idea how much is being spent and how much resource we can apply to this process.
We have done a lot of activities to support regenerative farming through the Apricot Centre, and we do quite a lot of work, but we haven't done local food in the same way that South Hams have, I don't think.
No, if I may, Chair. So building on what Mr Powell said, so South Hams invest a significant amount of money against climate change and biodiversity, simply money that West Devon does not have. And the peer review, the LGA peer review team came back to West Devon last week and basically said, you only have the resources and the finances that you have to deliver what's already in the council plan. So in terms of the process, it would need the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to say, we want to invest the money in climate change and biodiversity, but that would have to come out of other areas of the council plan. So that would really feed into the 26-27 budget setting process now, because we have set the budget for 25-26 on what we're going to do for the West Devon council plan. So in some ways, the October time frame feeds into that budget setting process. So it's the opportunity for the committee to make a recommendation to the hub and to the lead members to consider reprioritising funding.
Thank you. Councillor Viney, I think we should wrap up the food fairly soon.
Yeah, just to say that when you say food, what you are also talking about is health, and you also then need to include planning in this, because this is going to be a really significant part going forward with agricultural workers. Thanks.
I think we need to spend more time talking about it, so I think a presentation, then a task and finish group will give us the opportunity to do that. So are there any other things we want to look at in the next year?
You're talking in general now? Yeah. I think that it would be really useful for everybody to have a better grip of planning. Going on with what Nick says, planning is such a huge issue for everybody, and I think the way that it's going to impact on the environment and impact across the board on our housing needs is something that I don't think we're quite as engaged as we could be on that.
So, I mean, Councillor Mott is going to present about the built environment, which includes planning at this meeting. There was the briefing on the proposal weighed forward on the local plan, and of course the government is going through a whole sort of range of planning reforms anyway, and on the basis that this is important. We've tried to do those things as all member briefings to keep members updated on those developments. So I would suggest the combination of the planning committee, the member briefings and the hub lead member updates should keep members informed. But I mean, planning is complex, and if it's more training that members need to understand the policies, then that's something that we can arrange through the planning committee, planning and licensing committee.
Yeah, I think that would be good. You know, as I sit on the planning committee, I know how annoying and complex some of it can be, but I think if everybody was a bit more up to speed, it would be important. And then there's like small things that could have an impact on the way planning operates. For example, recently what happened in Sorkham, where they took a planning decision to stop a small development that had been done to be purely for second homes. And they stopped that, and that's not normally something historically that a council has done. And I think, again, that's something interesting for us to look at.
Councillor Daniel?
Thank you. I also would like, within the housing update, that we get much more promotion of community land trusts for our local communities, because now we've got grants available. I think it's a way that local communities can have more say and more control over what happens, particularly with the essential amenities in their communities. And I would really like to see us promote those more, if we can do.
Okay, thank you. We've got lots of work to do, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah. Well, you can feel free to email us later if you have more ideas. But that gives us plenty to think about. Thank you very much. So now we'll get back to the normal agenda. This is the Fusion annual report, and we're aiming for 25 minutes for this. So I'd like to welcome Mark Rogers, who's going to be giving us a presentation. Would you mind giving us a brief overview so we have plenty of time for questions, please? And also like to welcome Lauren and Simon, who are local managers, and John, who's the officer responsible for Fusion. So I think we can get started. Are you happy to do the presentation, Mark, please?
Yes, thank you for having us. My name's Mark Rogers. I'm the Communities and Partnerships Director for Fusion, for those of you that I haven't met. And just say thank you to members and officers through the last year. There's been a great level of support, challenge and collaboration, which I greatly appreciate. So happy to step through the agenda. It's fairly self-explanatory. It touches most of the key points that we operate the facilities within. Perhaps we can focus on the executive summary. It's a tale of two halves, really. One is very positive. We're seeing significant improvements in income, which is a very good thing, and it's reflective of a lot of strategic choices that we've made and improvements that we've made, and training that's been delivered, and adjustments to programming to meet demand and improve the provision within the local area. But on the flip side, we are facing still significant challenges, particularly related to premises, which primarily includes energy costs, but also includes the knock-on of inflationary costs so for services that we provide. So that continues to be a challenge, and whilst income is doing well, it is being outpaced by expenses. In terms of the year on year, we are seeing improvements in attendances. You will see that there are some sort of anomalies in the participation data. I can explain those if needed, but that's due to the way that our swim school numbers have been reported. The provider that we use changed their systems, and there was a gap in us reporting swim school attendances. So we may see some year-on-year reductions in places, but I would say based on the increased members, we would expect that actually to be see an increase in participation. The reporting is corrected at this point, which is why we're seeing that improvement from January to March. For those of you that are familiar with NPS, the NPS metric is a scale of 9 to 10, which are people who are advocates and they're promoters of the service. Between 7 and 8 they're scored as neutral, and then 1 to 6 is seen as a detractor. So we've had quite a significant number of responses. So we've got quite an active engagement with our membership base, over 1,000, and 72% of those score 7 or better. So whilst it's not perfect, it's broadly speaking, it's positive, and we look into where we're not receiving positive feedback and look to take corrective action. As we've said, the members are improving, which is good. We're continuing to see that bounce back. And interestingly, and I think importantly, we are seeing quite significant increases in concessionary membership year on year. And that, I think, is reflective of some of the challenges that residents are facing, and we're seeing this across most areas that we operate, where cost of living is causing challenges for individuals to continue to hold memberships or participate on a casual basis. As I said, the swim school is slightly down, but we do believe there's some small anomalies in that data, and we are expecting swim school actually to flatten out a little bit. And the reason for that is there was a huge demand post-COVID that we were having to facilitate, and that has just eased itself out naturally. So we're getting to a sort of flatter performance when we're comparing some things year on year. At Meadowlands, we've seen really positive swim school growth, and that's been through the additional recruitment of instructors and adjustments to programming. And we focused on energy, primarily around what can we do to support the environmental objectives, but secondly also we are very keen to see cost reductions as well, to make sure that we've got sustainable service moving forward. There's also a focus on our people. The colleagues in Devon have a really proactive engagement with some of the leadership and management courses that we deliver, and we've got 2 of our general managers now studying their level 7 leadership and management courses. And we've also, in addition to that, focused on our Active Communities programme. It's an area where I'm responsible for, and we've looked to really increase our engagement in the local community, so that there is that awareness of the services that we provide, but also to enable access for those groups or users that might not normally look to come to a leisure facility. So happy to pause if there's any specific questions on that, or I can carry on and go through the remaining presentation.
I think we'll try for some questions. I'm sorry, Mr. Parkinson, I didn't ask you to introduce anything. Do you have anything you want to say before we start on the questions?
No, I mean, from my, so I should say, Mark has given a very, concise summary from the presentation, and this is the annual review presentation for sort of 24 and part of 25. My little cover report is mainly just setting out a bit of a national context. So I've given a bit of a summary on some very high-level strategic reports that have come out the last year. So it gives you, as Mark's alluded to, there is still a challenge for the leisure industry, leisure sector, but there's, a positive side up to that as well. The biggest challenge being the ageing stock of leisure across the nation. We have old facilities, maintenance is very high to keep them updated, and we, nationally are seeing some facilities having to close down as well. So there's still a challenge, but moving forward, there is positive aspects going there. So yeah, my cover report is just alluding to a bit of a national view, but obviously relation to how business is doing across our 2 centres. But happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the reports and the information. Does the committee have any questions, please?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Daniel, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I just wanted to ask, and I think I've said this before anyway, that you hadn't mentioned the GP referral scheme and the position of our leisure centres in health and wellbeing, and I think that's the way that we really need to be going, because that we're really concerned that we make sure that our local population is as healthy and fit and active as it possibly can be because of all the benefits. And I'm really keen that rather than calling them leisure centres, you try and rebrand somehow or other in the future. We try and get this is really important for health, it's important for children's safety, everyone's safety to be able to swim and to be able to be as fit and active as they can be in their lives. So just wondering what is going that way. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question, for highlighting that point, because I think it's really important. We are increasingly focused, and I am in particularly focused around making the facilities more of a health and wellbeing facility, and not also focusing just on the facility, focusing on what we can do at other facilities within the local area, which then engage with individuals or groups that then create that pathway to bring them into this service. So in terms of the GP referral point, forgive me, I'm not exactly sure which slide number slide it's on, but in the active communities overview, we have delivered in the region of 450 GP referrals or self-referrals. I think it might be slide 34 or 35, perhaps. I won't do all the slides, don't worry. The route to access that referral pathway has changed slightly. So it was previously that you had to go to your GP. The GP would refer you to a facility, whether it was a fusion facility or another facility, and then you would have to fill out what is called a pre-exercise questionnaire, and often we'd end up then having to refer them back to the doctors to get them to send a letter to say that they were fit to exercise. It was kind of a nonsensical, that's the slide there, sorry, 37 is. So that route has changed, and now people can self-refer, and they can also be referred by their GP. So we've got quite a significant number actually within this area. It's very active for exercise referral, and of those referrals that we have received, and in West Devon there was 251, which in contrast for the number of facilities is higher than neighbouring South Hams, which is a fairly similar demographic, and there were 74% of those started the programme. There are some reasons why they can't start the programme. Some of them might be that they decide not to, but others might just be too complex a condition for us to be able to safely facilitate them. And of those 74% that started, we've got a 45% completion rate. So it's it's quite an active programme. It's going well, and we are increasingly focused in this space. We believe that that's the difference between a local community-led facility such as ourselves versus a commercial operation which wouldn't necessarily operate something like this.
Thank you. Thanks.
May I also add that we are working with Parkinson's groups locally as well as children in care groups as well. So we are broadening what we offer rather than just seemingly being that leisure centre within the four walls. We are exploring other options.
Yeah, another example was we've agreed a partnership within Plymouth Hospital around diabetes. So we have an active communities team, and their role is to engage within the local community, within key groups, and look to enable and facilitate participation for those that might find that a challenge or may not have had that opportunity to do so previously. And by working particularly in the example of Parkinson's, and in some cases on exercise referral as well, if we can get like-minded individuals to work together, like within the Walking Poles group, then they build a social connection, they have tea and coffee afterwards, and there's just a significant improvement to their general well-being as well as their sort of health and fitness.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reid?
Yes, you notice in the screen there that costs have gone up 38% this last year. Is there a breakdown on the major reasons for this increase, please? What the various factors are?
I can provide a full breakdown. It is primarily energy related and staffing related. So as energy costs, as we know, have been significantly on the increase. And when we forecast our original plan to the local authority and officers in 2023, late 2023, we didn't have an entirely full sight of what we expected, and whilst the performance against our income projections is where we anticipated it to be, the performance against costs is below what we had expected, because the costs increased more than we had anticipated. We do also face a challenge going into 25-26, whilst we're expecting from an overall organisational perspective to be at we're expecting to be at a break-even point. The changes to national insurance mean that we have about, and this is nationally, so forgive me, but it's probably relative to sort of 10% at least of that within this area, an increase of £1 million in national insurance costs alone.
Are there likely to be any major issues in the future with regard to maintenance of the buildings?
No major issues, no. We work through two parts. We have a statutory compliance area, which is all the things that we need to do legally, which we focus on and report on a regular basis. And then we have two elements to our maintenance. One is planned and preventative maintenance, which takes part on a routine basis. And then we have reactive maintenance, which deals with anything that wasn't expected, but obviously can happen when you're operating in old buildings and with complex machinery.
I can just add as well, as a council, we are looking to do condition surveys of our centres. They were last done approximately about 10 years ago, ahead of the current contract we have with Fusion. So it's probably done in 2014, 2015, ahead of the new contract we have here. So as a council, we have taken a view of it would be pertinent to have another condition survey done of all our centres, and that will then flag up, areas of not concern, but obviously future planning as to what needs to be done. And that will sit with, Fusion, but also what responsibility as a council we take that looking forward.
And I would recommend you join the working group for a visit to the leisure centre and just have a look at the plant. It's quite illuminating. Councillor Vachon, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you. Yeah, question about membership. Thank you, Mark. That's a good presentation. I went through the entire slides last night, so I was quite impressed. But membership, you're saying the membership is actually increasing. I'm just wondering what the demographics are for those particular new membership or even existing membership. Obviously, we've had a lot of new houses and properties going up in our area, and we're just wondering if those are the people who are actually using that. You just say there was a cost of living issue that some people may not be able to afford it. So does that relate anything to membership costs? But it'd be interesting if you have stats on the demographics.
I can provide stats on the demographic. We subscribe to an industry tool through a company called 4Global, who also report on social value within our contracts. The demographic report from them is extremely good, and we're looking at undertaking those across Fusion, so we can clearly see where our members are coming from, but equally where our members are not coming from, and why is that? Because of competition? Is it because of travel? Is it some other reason? In terms of affordability, what we're seeing in our leaver responses is an increased number of people citing cost as a reason for leaving. But what we are seeing from a overall membership base, as I alluded to earlier, is that we're seeing an increase year on year of 10% of our members or casual users qualifying for or asking for a concessionary membership. So that in broad terms gives them about a 25% discount off a standard price for either going for a swim or going to the gym or being a member. So I would say, based on that, there is definitely a higher demand for a lower cost membership option. And what is likely happening through the sector, in my experience working both in public and private leisure, is that you are likely to see those that are spending more, some of those dropping down a level, a bit like a supermarket. Maybe they're shopping in one supermarket and then they're moving to another one because it's slightly better value for them. So I think that is happening within the sector at the moment, and actually our facilities are probably a beneficiary of that. And coupled with the fact that we do provide quite a comprehensive concessionary programme, it seems logical that people will be looking to benefit from that.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question on that? Sorry, is that right, Paul? Okay, thank you. So you're using the social value calculator. So my question was, how do you assess the socio-economic group of a member? And I presume that's all to do with a concession, because you wouldn't, I don't see what questions you could ask a normal member unless they were asking for a concession.
So with the, sorry, I'll say that again because I don't think I was clear. The organisation that produces the information around social value, they also provide demographic and geographic information on local areas. So we subscribe to that platform so we can understand exactly where our members are living, what the demographic makeup of that particular area is, and that can give us a quite clear picture of the types of members that are using or also aren't using our facilities, and that helps us in terms of thinking about things like pricing, thinking about things like marketing and what areas we are targeting or we aren't targeting, and also things like competition, so we can understand areas where we might not be accessing as many of the users or members within that area, but that's because there are more providers and therefore they have more choices to where they go. So we are definitely using those things. We can pull the demographic information, although it's not as easy as it used to be because members don't provide as much information because they're more guarded around GDPR, etc. But things like ethnicity data, male-female data, age, we can pick that information quite clearly from our membership base, and again that helps us to understand where our members are coming from or what types of programs and activities that we would look to put on, which is one of the reasons why we've got quite a focus around class-based activities or daytime activities within this particular area, as opposed to maybe a more city-based facility that would have higher usage after work as a sort of typical example. So it helps us to understand the makeup of people using the facilities and modify our programming accordingly.
Thank you. I could ask more questions, but Councillor Leach, sorry, I forgot you earlier.
I'm forgettable. Don't worry. I want to go back to referrals. I'm very pleased to see that referrals are getting quite well. My question will be the same as what's last year and probably the year before that. In as much referrals, those who are referred still have to pay a fee. Have you found any way of getting funding for those people who can't afford to pay a fee?
So, Lauren, actually, you might be best placed just to answer in terms of the discounted level that referees receive for a period of time. Do you mind answering that question if you've got that detail?
Yeah, so without committing to an exact percentage, it's something like 45% discount on our headline rate. However, John, myself and Rob, the regional manager, are meeting next month to see how it works slightly differently in Mendip because the customer gets a higher discount. So there are plans to review it and to see how we can make that more affordable. So potentially, when you ask next year, we may have some further information for you.
It's a very valid point, and I think, and across the country, there is different ways of doing it. And it's fair to say, for health referrals in West Devon, South Hams, it's fully funded by Fusion, by the operator. There is no funding whatsoever from health. either locally or strategically, county, whatever. It's part of a membership package, really, and as Lauren alluded to, a subsidised rate. Whereas we know our Fusion colleagues operate in Mendip, and through the health partnership there, the health partnership give money to Fusion to help subsidise further. I don't think it's quite free, but it's at a much discounted rate. And it's, nationally we have these sort of ad hoc, it's good in one place, it's different in another. And that's what we're fighting with. And where we can get local contacts and information, and strives are making place in other areas on health. But as an exercise referral scheme, unless there's other funding, you're right, Tony, it will probably discount a fair number of people in coming forward on the cost of paying for that scheme, even though it's at a reduced level. Unless we get some further funding to help, that will be the ongoing challenge.
I guess that's something we ought to be trying to lobby for from others.
So, thank you, Fusion and John. I was going to ask exactly the same question, Councillor Leach, because the link to poverty and health is well established, and if there's not, how do you get people in poverty healthier? And there needs to be a link. So can I suggest that the Task and Finish group pick this up as a specific area to look at? And John, I'm quite happy for us to see how we engage with health. But I think the whole issue, and perhaps a bit of research, Councillor Vachon, in terms of what's done elsewhere, that we can lobby our colleagues in the healthcare sector to consider this, because I think it's unfair that it's all on Fusion. I think it's admirable what you've done so far, but I think to make this go to the next level, then it needs more funding, basically. So,
I think as well, there is a distinct difference between this provision being done through unitary authorities and the provision that is done through sort of district rural areas. So I think when you see examples across the country, it's where unitary provision, where obviously the health is part of that service, that there is a higher level of support to elsewhere. So,
Councillor Leach.
Yeah, a couple of other things. Swim school, very pleased to see it's going better. Are we now getting a better response from the local academy, who seem to be cutting back on such things?
Lauren, I don't know the specific detail on that question. I don't know whether you do.
So we're engaged, Parklands alone is engaged with 14 schools, and Meadowlands is engaged with 7 schools. Still hasn't grown to where we would like it. Still a lot of schools tied in with coach contracts with Mount Kelly, unfortunately. But hopefully in the next year or two, those contracts finish and they'll start coming back, which is what we've seen over the last year anyway. I think from moving through the academy and through the scheme, we've got brilliant relationships with both our clubs. We've got Tavistock Swims Club at Meadowlands and Otters at Parklands. Both are producing national and regional swimmers. And the transition from us and our swim school at stage 10 into their programmes is really quite seamless, and we've built a really good relationship. So I think we're quite strong in that area. It's just making sure we've got the recruitment of swim teachers and carry on progressing it up the chain, and it will work really well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last one. It's on maintenance. I see in the report that the floor at Parklands had new cables. Yes? No? So is it now working properly, or are you still having issues with setting heights?
It's currently still not in use at present.
I think that should be made very clear in this report, because this has gone on far, far too long. And it's about time we did go to Sporting and say, come on, put your money where your mouth is and actually fund this and get it going properly. So that was that one. And the last time, I'm sorry bring this one up. How's this lift going at Parklands?
Fixed and being used by all the users. Probably would have seen some fun social posts on that recently as well. So, but yeah, no, the members are really happy. And,
Okay.
referral scheme's growing quite quickly off the back
Keep
of
your
it.
fingers crossed, but you must have a plan B if it goes wrong again.
Understood.
Thank you very much. I think we've exceeded our time, so we could continue the conversation in the working group. So we're okay to wrap this up? Thank you very much, Lauren, Simon, Mark, and John, for your time. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, we do have a recommendation that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the contents and progress of Fusion's annual report for 2024 and proposals for 2025. Could we have a show of hands in agreement, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I feel like we could talk all day, couldn't we, on every subject? With refreshments, yes. So moving now on to item 8. Sorry, did you want to say something?
I was only going to say, what, even about built environment?
Okay, so we're moving on to item 8, which is a thematic update on the built environment, and we have a suggested time of 20 minutes. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. I was expecting 10.
Mr. Powell. So would you like to talk to us, please?
Well, yeah, hopefully everybody's managed to take a look at the update, and it's just really to make sure whether there's any questions, whether there's more information or detail that you require.
Straight on to questions.
Straight on to questions, Chair.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, please? Mr. Molyneux.
That's not allowed. You weren't here earlier, Councillor Mott, when Councillor Guthrie raised the fact that members probably need to know more information about planning and the impact it has on our environment. So I'd open it to Councillor Guthrie to relay your comments back if you want to Councillor Mott.
It was really not based on anything other than I wanted to annoy Caroline Mott. No, I was just looking at across the board. I think we all know that planning is complicated and difficult, and with all the changes coming up, it's difficult. But I think that all members should be more up to speed on how much we can or can't affect planning. And I just brought up, particularly, I think, around things like the environment and water use, all those things that go round and round in circles, and often we feel quite disempowered in that. And in making decisions on planning committees, we often don't really have the tools where I think we can make sufficient impact. So I understand we can't do everything at our level, but I think updating all the members and having it as a broader reach across the council would be useful. And I just picked on one simple thing when I mentioned about a planning decision that happened in Salcombe recently, where there was a quite fancy house built, and I think with several apartments in it, and it was built specifically for letting and second home, and the council there rejected that. And it was quite an interesting thing because that's not often done. So I was just looking at what areas members can see where we could be useful in protecting what homes we have and where the new builds come in, and the second home issue, etc.
So I'm happy to do the first bit, but I will pass it over to Mr. Powell to do the second bit, because he'll obviously be more familiar with that application and that decision. I'm sorry to hear that you feel disempowered as a member. If we go right back to grassroots, parish councils can obviously have an input into any application, because they are able to make comments, they are able to comment on anything to do with that application. So that's usually a good place to start with comments. And you as members can also speak to officers if you're concerned about an application with regard to its construction, its appearance, how effective it is, how green it is, if you like, anything to do with the landscaping. You can raise those concerns with the officer. You can also raise those concerns with me if you feel that that's not being dealt with through the officers, and it can certainly be raised if the application comes through to committee. If you feel that you want more sort of generic information, then if you sort of let me know. If you want to email that across, we can certainly see if we can put that on as a planning training type session, either after a planning meeting or as a standalone session. So we always welcome any updates or any training that you feel would be relevant to help you either function as a member more effectively or as a planning committee more effectively.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, it was the disempowerment thing. Perhaps I slightly didn't put the right inflection on that. I meant in the way that the government is trying to change planning and therefore disempowers us as a group as opposed to us as individual councillors. And yeah, for me, as you know, on the planning committee, and then speaking to some other members who aren't on that, I think a sort of bit more training would be very useful. Thanks.
We can certainly get that in place for you. And yes, you're not the only one that's feeling disenchanted with the sheer volume of stuff that's coming down through at the moment with various consultations and decisions. Yeah.
If I can, Chair, just to add a little bit to that. So obviously at the moment we're operating under the Joint Local Plan, which has been somewhat compromised by the changes to the MPPF and the policy framework that sits within that. The changes to that will come forward as we develop a new local plan, and that's when particular policies around the environment could be enhanced potentially. But that is in the shadow of the government changes at the moment, which may be relaxing some of the requirements. There's consultations out on biodiversity net gain, the role of DM committees. We're pulling together a response to all those consultations. They're coming out quite haphazardly at the moment under this big umbrella of planning reform. So we've done our best to keep track with that and make sure we put appropriate consultations back. In addition, the issue in Salcombe, which is the one I think you're referring to, was around primary residency. So that was a policy that would put in the neighbourhood plan for the Salcombe area. So that can be done, but you have to have an evidence base to ensure that it's reasonable. The evidence base for Salcombe was quite clear. Everyone knows about the situation. This was pioneered by St Ives Council down in Cornwall originally, which said basically any new development needs to be for primary residents. At the moment, that doesn't apply to the majority, I think probably all of West Devon. Probably there isn't the evidence base to support that approach, but it's something that can be explored through the development of the new policies under the local plan. Will that help?
Thank you. Yeah, I just think it's a good way of highlighting how things can be done and whether that is appropriate for us and whether there's a bit more research that we need to be doing. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to get a little bit more information and perhaps some guidance on how the process can change to allow for properties that have that are basically fit for habitation, but may fall foul of some rule with regard to isolated location, etc. How they can be built into a process that links more with the fact that we have a housing crisis. Emergency declared. It seems to me odd that if we have that and we want to try and increase housing as fast as possible, we need to make the process as flexible to allow for all properties that are habitable to be brought inside that envelope.
Like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, we do support as much housing delivery as we can. That obviously depends on the developer to then build out that planning permission.
But we do also have our existing policies that we need to follow. The big policy, if you like, that has been affected is SPT 3, which is around the housing numbers. But all of our other policies still stand until we come up with new ones. So that's what we need to operate within at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor. My concern is the briefing we had last week showing how we as a council are expected to increase our number of starts per year from 100 and something odd to 443. Clearly, developers building multiple properties are a significant part of that process, but also the one-offs, people who want to develop land or change the use of a building and what have you. If you get 5 or so of those, say 6 a month, that's another 70 a year. It makes a big difference to your number creation process and, more importantly, providing housing for those people who need it, particularly at the sustainable and affordable levels.
Chair, if I can. I think you mentioned, earlier about sort of properties that are uninhabitable. If there's already a property there that's uninhabitable, then we would support bringing the property back into use as a dwelling. I think there's a big distinction between that and a new development in the countryside. And there are sort of policies around the sustainability of individual properties being built in unsustainable locations. So we'd have to apply the normal policy framework to that. But if there's already a dwelling that's not habitable, then we would certainly support the use, bringing that back to be habitable. And we actually provide grants to enable that in those circumstances.
Thank you. I think this is an ongoing conversation which we talk about all the time. I think Councillor Daniel and then Councillor Viney.
Thank you. You have touched on this, but I just wanted it to be a bit more specific about the joint local plan. We've said about the government changes, and also you've written there that South Hams may not wish to continue with the joint local plan, and West Devon are going to be formulating our own local plan. So is there actually a graduated withdrawal? Are there plans in place to what will happen when we don't have the joint local plan, or that possibly after restructuring of councils, what we will do? Because we want it to be smooth rather than chaotic. I think that was what my concern is.
So all of our housing delivery for all 3 authorities are still monitored against the joint local plan. That process is still there, and the officers are still working to that. The joint local plan will stand until it's superseded either by our own local plan, which is a standalone one with South Hams, or be it a unitary plan. So the idea behind doing our own local plan is it gives us and our residents chance to shape how they want West Devon to look in the future, and that's why we want to go ahead. And the hope is that we can get that far enough along the line that whenever anybody makes their mind up about what the reorganisation is going to look like, we have already done that work, we've done that process and consultation. They will therefore have to take that plan on board.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Thanks, Caroline.
Councillor Viney, and I think we're pushing on towards our time limit.
This might not be appropriate for here, but maybe you can help me. I've been asked to comment on a scenario, an old age pensioner in a grade 2 listed home that is in rapid decline and needs work. As I understand it, they don't qualify for grants it's an oil-fired property at the moment. It's not well insulated, and because of its listing, it's single glazed. What does somebody do? How can I help somebody in that situation? They have actually put the property for sale, but there's very little interest in that type of property for these reasons.
I think certainly the best option would be to get hold of our heritage officers to be able to discuss what changes can be made with regards to the listing and what work can be done. I know we do work hard with people to upgrade listed properties. So certainly point them in that direction in the first instance. So.
And I don't know if you had a chance to speak to our environmental health team Dave Sexton within the environmental health team would look at whether there's any other grants available. The grants that come from the government, the HUG scheme and so on, they are limited, and it is a question of affordability. Sometimes, the amount of work on a building like that would probably make it difficult to justify, but we do have some discretion around that. So it'd be worth checking with Dave, and he can certainly point you in the right direction. Okay.
Councillor Leach.
Yeah, hopefully a quick one. The only orange bit you've got on your report, slightly off track, sought to explore the development of a local list for historic buildings, etc. And it says lack of funding. I do wonder why you are even doing that for this area, because you've got Devonshire Association, you've got historic buildings for Devon, you've also got the Devon bit of Society for Protection of Ancient Buildings, where you could probably get all that information from. So why are we as Little West Devon trying to do what's already being done?
I think perhaps lack of funding was perhaps a poor choice of words to put down for that, Councillor Leach. It comes down to officer time to be able to do that work and to do that liaison with all of the others to draw that information together so that we've got it on hand, easier for officers to be able to reference.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we finish up with one last question from Councillor Dexter, please?
Well, thank you. It's specifically page 71, and it refers to the challenge of challenging development market at the moment and maintaining requests for viability payments. I'm just wondering, I think on the 30% is the target for social housing in major developments, and obviously it is a challenging environment. I'm just wondering how are we performing by obtaining levels of social housing from respective developments?
I wouldn't be able to give you a specific percentage at the moment, Councillor, but I will certainly ask officers to look into that and feed that back to you via the chair, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Are we okay to finish this section? We have a recommendation that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee considers the progress update against the built environment section of the Council Plan. Can we have a show of hands in agreement, please? Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us and for your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Okay, so our next section is another 20 minutes, thematic update on performance and resources, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Edmonds and Mr. Hawke to present the report, please. Thank you for joining us. So we're looking for 20 minutes. Are you okay to introduce the report, Councillor Edmonds?
I am indeed. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. This report provides the Overview and Scrutiny Committee with a progress update on the performance and resources theme of the Council's delivery plan. Adopted in March 25, the current Council Plan outlines key priorities and actions to support the effective delivery of services and the responsible use of resources. Details of progress against the specific actions within the performance and resources theme are provided in Appendix A to this report, and I'll just highlight some of the key areas, if I may. Recruitment activity has been positive, with a good level of applicants from most of the advertised vacancies. And the Council has recently filled key roles that have been vacant for some time. Examples would be in legal and head of assets and land and property. Thank you. As you know, the Council has set a balanced budget for the 2025-26 financial year, and the finance team have been working hard to close the accounts by the end of June, and in readiness for the external audit, which is due to commence in July. We're monitoring service performance levels to see how we compare to similar local authorities, and an annual report on the performance of the council is a separate agenda item for this meeting. Good progress has been made with the migration of Office 365 and SharePoint, increasing the resilience of our systems. Civica financials went live on the 9th of December 2024, and the finance team have responded positively to the new software. A staff survey to help inform our organisational development plans has recently been undertaken with a response rate of over 70%. Officers held a business continuity exercise where all heads of service were required to respond to a cyber attack, an ever-present risk for the council. A guaranteed interview scheme has been implemented for candidates with a disability, ex-forces and care-experienced young people. The council is promoting apprenticeship opportunities to develop our own talent, and I think it's 8 apprentices that are working across the 2 councils. A new procurement strategy is being developed, promoting sustainable, transparent and value-for-money procurement practices while enhancing opportunities for local suppliers and SMEs. The draft survey will be presented to the Hub Committee in July. A new head of land and property joined us in April and is developing an asset management strategy and delivery plan to ensure we are managing our property assets effectively. We're happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Chair. It was mentioned just now in the previous agenda item about doing a condition survey across the council. Is this built into this process?
Would you mind using your microphone, please?
That strategy is currently being developed by the new head of assets, and that is underway.
So are you talking about this building in particular, Councillor? Across the whole of the estate?
We talked about leisure centres earlier.
Ah, we're talking about, right, okay. I think that's part of the strategy. I was thought you were referring to this building where we're already commissioned a DDA survey for the whole building, being Disability Discrimination Act, so making sure we are compliant with that and any actions to undertake with that. That, in terms of the whole estate, we can certainly get an update from the new head of land and property and feed that back through the chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. This question, I was going to ask Fusion, but actually, if we're going to be surveying our properties, it might be better here. I'm wondering what happens to all the old equipment. Having looked at Meadowlands, how much redundant equipment they've got in their, I don't know, engine room, boiler room. There's masses of it. And I'm just wondering, you know, that's going to be our responsibility sometime or another. And what about the safe disposal of all that equipment and recycling, etc.? No, are we looking at that and what we can do about it? Because it's actually quite shocking the amount of old redundant equipment they have in our leisure centres. Thank you.
In the absence of Mr. Parkinson, can I suggest we ask the Task and Finish group for leisure to specifically pick that?
Thanks very much. Yes.
Ask that question because I wouldn't have a clue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can I ask a question? I ask this question every couple of years. So this is to do with the migration of services to Office 365 and SharePoint. And I think I know what the answer will be. Why do we continue to purchase software from a massive corporation? Other European countries like Denmark are trying to phase out the use of Microsoft products because they want greater control over their digital infrastructure, data, and cloud services. So my question is, do you know of any councils looking into this as an option in the UK? Well, thank you.
Thanks for that question, Chairman. So the reality is we don't automatically always go to a large, worldwide corporation. Microsoft, other corporations are available. And one example would be our website, which is now not hosted on any particular, it's an open source platform. We always look to get best value for the council. I attended a Southwest Forum, which was all around IT, on Thursday last week in Somerset, and MHCLG digital team were there, and they were talking about the challenges that government and local government in particular face over the lack of suppliers entering the marketplace. And one of the examples would be council tax and housing benefits, where there are only 3 suppliers of council tax and housing benefit systems in the country. So every council is with one of those 3 suppliers, and there's very little competition, there's very little development and modernisation of those systems, and it's a real challenge, and it's been recognised by MLCLG as to how do we get new entrants with innovative products that use AI and assisted stuff like that to get forward. I spoke to a provider of ERP systems, and before you ask Councillor Reid, I'll ask Patrick to this. I don't know the abbreviation stands for Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, and they were a new startup company, and they were saying they just don't bother bidding for local government contracts because they can't get through the door because of the established suppliers. So it's a real challenge for councils, and government recognise that and have vowed to try and improve the situation. Does that answer your question?
I could ask more, but I think it would get boring.
Yeah. I will squirm more.
Guthrie.
It's just a sideways related thing, but if we were looking to encourage members and the council to look at alternative search engines, I think it's worth looking into that because, for example, there's a search engine, Ecosia, which acts and donates to trees worldwide. It's now a pretty big search engine. So if you're every day using your search engine and you go to Ecosia, it's a really excellent decarbonisation and useful thing for everybody to use. And it's a bit like, and I don't wish to insult anybody, but we all like things yesterday in our society, and using Ecosia is a positive, and it's a bit like using Amazon. It's like, if you don't have to use Amazon, you shouldn't be using it, and if as a council we do, we shouldn't, because they don't really add anything into the positivity of any potential changes in society. So I think we could look at all of those things.
It's a good point, but I guess something to just remind members of is we're not a massive council, and you look at, we don't have a load of people sat there thinking, what could we do differently? Because we're just busy doing the doing in the most cases. And if you take cybersecurity, you know, if we were a large council, then we might have a team of people who could be looking at, well, what products can we integrate into our systems and this, that, and the other. The fact is we don't. We have, in effect, one officer shared across both councils who is trying to keep us safe. So sometimes, with the limited resources we have to do what is easiest, not necessarily what is best.
I fully accept that, but say, let's look forward.
And we do appreciate what you do. Thank you. Can I ask another question, please? So on page 82, you're going to update our procurement. We're going to update our procurement strategy to guarantee greater emphasis on reducing climate impact of the council supply chain and to increase social value. How will we measure social value?
Well, there are a set of KPIs that are being developed as part of that strategy. Mr. Hawke will, I'm sure, confirm, but I believe there is a measure proposed within the KPIs to achieve that.
That's correct, Councillor Edmonds. We are looking at various tools that can measure social value through our contracting activity as well. I think it's fair to say when we go to tender at the moment, we do encourage all suppliers to set out how they might contribute to social value within the borough, within Devon and wider. But we don't actively then monitor that and follow up on it to say, okay, you said you were going to do that. Are you doing it? And that's what the shift is in the procurement strategy, is that we're actively going to monitor the social value delivered through our contracting activities. We may also put weightings on certain procurements to the social value element. At the moment, it's down to each head of service to decide whether or not they want to apply that. But in the procurement strategy, we propose that we do, in fact, include a social value weighting on all tendering activities, which will mean suppliers that can demonstrate the greater social value will score the greater points. And therefore potentially win the contract. So, but I won't say too much because that strategy is coming to Hub shortly, and we're going through it at a Hub briefing this afternoon. So, probably only fair that Hub see it first.
We're going to have to wait. So, I think we nearly finished the time for this session. Are there any other questions, please? Doesn't look like it. So we have a recommendation that the Overview Scrutiny Committee considers the progress update against the performance and resources section of the council plan. Could we have a show of hands in agreement, please? Thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining us. Are you on for the next one? Who's next? Oh, key performance indicators. I think we need a little breather. But perhaps we should just press on, should we? Item 10, key performance indicators for 2024 and 25 and April to May 2025. This is 20 minutes. Would you like to give a brief introduction, Councillor Edmonds, please?
I'll keep it brief, Chair, thank you. Well, this report reviews two periods: the performance for the financial year April 24 to March 25, and the first performance update for 2025-26, April-May. This aligns with the Council's performance management framework that requires at least 3 performance updates per year to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Report recommendation, which is on the screen, is that this committee is asked to consider and note the key performance indicators for last year and the April to May 25 period of this financial year. So if we can turn to Appendix A, I don't know if we can do that, it's probably on your screens. We can see a review of last year's annual performance, which shows that average performance was on or above target in all areas except for complaints and revenue calls. Just to give you a little bit of information on the complaints, 70% of the average performance, 70% of complaints received were dealt with within the time frame. These are stage 1 complaints completed within the 20-day time scale. It's worth noting that over the year we received 65 complaints. When you consider the range of services that the council provides and the number of transactions that are dealt with, I think that's, I hope you'll agree, a pretty good number. So 43 of those complaints were completed in the year and 30 of those were completed on time. Reason perhaps why some of those complaints are not completed on time, I think, is due mainly to the complexity of the complaints, and on average the overdue complaints exceed the 20-day completion target by 7 days. I think that's complaints. The second area was revenues calls, The target is 80%, and the average performance for the year was 72%. And as you'll see on the notes, a significant amount of work to increase the performance of revenues caused during the year, which should be reflected in the current year's performance. Performance is monitored on a fortnightly basis by the Director of Customer Services and the Head of Revenues and Benefits. Measures in place to improve collection rates, council tax and business rates, have actually generated additional calls. So that's part of the reason why it's just missed the target. And that these calls are quite difficult to move online. Collection rates have reached a record level. For example, last year's collection rate for council tax was 98.69%. Against a target of 97.75. That puts the council in the top quartile in the country for collection rate, which is a really good result. Non-business rates, 97.81% for the year, which places the council, we think, will be in the second quartile with that performance. So as I said, it does impact on the number of calls regarding those collections, and residents are able to speak to specialist officers, which should result in higher levels of customer satisfaction due to more queries being resolved at the first point of contact, which is obviously a real benefit. So that's the annual performance. If we look at the current year's performance and the May figures, and really it's very much the same sort of picture. We've got complaints and revenues calls, which I've just talked about, and the other two areas that are very slightly under target are employment estates and recycling rates. Although we're above the national average on recycling rates, we're not quite meeting our own local rate. And that's quite a difficult one to influence. I know the council has done promotions around recycling in the past. Employment estates are just fractionally under, but that is well managed. The estates are well managed, and the occupancy rate is high. And there are plenty of applications or people interested in taking up units as they become empty. So I think that's probably all I need to say at this stage, but of course, we're welcome to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Councillor Daniel?
Seem to be doing a lot of talking in this. I wanted to ask about the revenue calls, and see the longest wait was 25 minutes, which is too long. I think we all agree. Though we average it out, I think people are waiting too long. And do we offer a callback facility so they can leave their number and we can call them back? Because people get so annoyed by the time they've waited that length, or even 10-minute wait is long when you've got something that you feel is quite urgent or it's a priority to you. So what actually are we doing for those calls? Thanks.
Yes, we do, Councillor Daniel. We do offer that functionality, which means that we would then call them back in order that they are in the queue. So we do offer that, but some people decide to stay on the line. So it's certainly available to our customers.
Councillor Leach?
Yes, that's one of the concerns I have, because I know of certainly one person who's tried to make contact about benefits, and because this person works, they have a time slot when you can actually try to get through. So they've hung on the line for half an hour 3 times and still haven't got through. So they've then contacted me to try and short-circuit the system. This shouldn't be a way of short-circuiting the system. It should be picked up by somebody. While I've got the floor, the other thing that I'm finding with, surprisingly enough, Universal Credit, know that they've taken over more things. I've had concerns and very strong concerns for people where Universal Credit has made a mistake. 1 month And all of a sudden, it's classed as a change of circumstances the next month without any warning. So benefits stop again. And there's something, ever since I've been on this council, I've been saying we've got to find a way round not stopping benefits, just cutting them off. That puts people into debt, that puts them into stress, and sometimes worse than that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for a minute.
I'll respond to that. So in terms of the calls, there will always be, we can't ever resource to be able to and predict when the demand is going to come in. So we try and make sure we look at when the calls come in and try and make sure that we know that Monday mornings, for example, is a time when and we try and make sure there's more staff on a Monday morning. But if we have 10 staff available to take phone calls and 12 people ring up, then the person who's 12th might not get answered for a considerable time. That's always going to be a challenge. In terms of benefits calls, I'm really surprised because you look at the benefits performance and it's consistently in the 90% of calls answered. So whether that's, that person, like you say, they've got a specific window, and if that's always the busy time, there's very little we can do about that. But that's why we monitor it all the time and we look all the time. We try and stagger when we send letters out, recovery notices, so that it doesn't create a demand all in one block where maybe 100 people all get a letter and all think, right, I need to contact the council. So we try and look at all of those ways of smoothing that demand, including the ability to ring, we'll call, leave a message and we'll call you back, and that then feeds into our agent's call queue. So it's not like the agent says, right, I've got a list of people to call back. The system does it automatically. So as soon as there is free time, then it basically says, I'll call this customer back on this number and puts them through to the agent. So it's an automated process. It's not like we then get a list and someone says, well, I'll look at that list or I won't look at that list. In terms of the universal credit issue, I mean, that is much more complex. We are signed up to an MOU with the DWP, that a memorandum of understanding. Councillor Reid, it's okay. Of TLAs, 3-letter abbreviations. So from that perspective, there are timeframes we have to meet and act in terms of the response. We have to rely on the agencies that say, because the issue we've got is if we didn't stop benefit and let that benefit run on, and it was a genuine case where the benefit should have been stopped, then we lose our ability to claim that back, so it comes off our bottom line. So I know it's an age-old problem, and there isn't a solution, and the government's current drive to move more stuff to universal credit probably won't help, I'm afraid. I know that's not a satisfactory answer, but it's the answer.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Yes, can I...
Thank you, Councillor Reid. So the targets on the whole are locally set targets, but they do exceed the most nationally set targets. So that's certainly what we're working towards. We were hoping to include some benchmarking against other councils in this report, but there's quite a lag with the government pulling together all of that data, so it wasn't available for this meeting. But on the whole, the targets that we've set locally exceed those that are national targets.
In which case, can I pass a compliment to the officers in general for having set a high target and appear to be either close or better than them? I think it should be noted that we are doing well as a council, and we should be proud of ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Vashon.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, this is me being thick. number of missed bins, this is page 109, number of missed bins per 100k. I was looking at the target on that and it said 80, and we've reached 37. And I suddenly realised, obviously that's below target, but the way it's presented here looks odd, if you know what I mean, that we're actually above the target, if you know what I mean, but we're mentioning it's below. So I just wonder if we can present that in a slightly different way that the normal man in the street might understand that. And just going on to the following page, on 110, obviously we apparently we're above target, but actually we're shown as being below target on that one. We're near to the target, but we're actually below it. But we do actually say we're above target on that one. So it's just a matter of presentation, I think. But I say that's just me being silly.
I think on that one, what it's saying is that we're above the average for England. Again, we've set a local target at 57%, and we're just slightly off that one at 54%. So, yeah, that's the way that's been presented. But again, we're stretching that
I'm just thinking, should we say near to target, or just slightly below target as opposed to above target?
We can certainly pick that up from a presentation perspective, Councillor Ashton.
Okay.
Yep. I'm being very picky, sorry.
That's fair enough. Yeah, good. Sorry, what was the other point there? Yeah.
I think that's fine. Can I ask a couple of clarification questions? So temporary accommodation use per month, and the figure's 25. Does that mean 25 families were in temporary accommodation? I presume it does. And also the second question is, in May there was an average of 18 callers a day to Kilworthy Park, and I presume that's on just a Tuesday, is it?
Yes.
Yes and yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. We have a recommendation that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee consider and note the key performance indicators for 2024, 2025 and April to May 2025. Can we have a show of hands in agreement, please? Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds and Mr. Hawke. Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Let's do that.